Act 1, Scene 1. And I'm going to, all my comments, all my references will be to act, scene, line number, which, by the way, if you write about Shakespeare and you cite, let's say Lear, you cite it like this. Lear, underline it, 1, 2, 25 to 36. Okay? No Roman numerals. All right? So, pardon?
Like a recent change with some.
No, it's been like that for quite a while.
My wallpaper, I did that last semester, and I just
For-
saw it in my MLA book. Yeah, for Shakespeare.
Unless,
And I'm like,
unless they've changed it in the last 2 years that I'm not familiar with. But I've got the most recent edition of the Guide for Scholarly Publishing. Okay, so Act 1, Scene 1. We'll back up just a minute. Look at the dramatis personae, the list of the characters. You've got Lear, King of Britain. Notice it's King of Britain. It's not King of England. This is pre-England. Okay? This is Celtic Britain. And then you have the King of France, which immediately blows the chronology all out of the water. Because when there was Britain, there wasn't any France. It was Gaul. Shakespeare's not really all that concerned about the historical accuracy. Goneril, Lear's eldest daughter, the Duke of Albany, her husband. Regan, Lear's second daughter. Duke of Cornwall, her husband. Cordelia, Lear's youngest daughter, she's unmarried. Okay? Which is why the King of France and the Duke of Burgundy are there. All right? You have the Earl of Kent, the Earl of Gloucester. Edgar, Gloucester's elder son, later disguised as Tom of Bedlam. Edmund, Gloucester's younger bastard son. It's not bastard in a moral sense, it's bastard in a legitimate sense, or illegitimate, I should say. Oswald, Goneril's steward, an old man, and a few others, including the fool. So, it opens with Kent speaking with Gloucester. And he says, I thought the king had more affected the Duke of Albany than Cornwall. That is, I thought he'd preferred the Duke of Albany over Cornwall. Okay? Gloucester, yeah, that's what it seemed to me. But now, in the division of the kingdoms, it appears not which of the dukes he values most. Notice, Gloucester's the one who brings up that the kingdom will be divided. Okay? And then Kent notices Gloucester's son. Is not this your son, my lord? His breeding, sir, hath been at my charge. In other words, yeah, I'm responsible for him. Okay? I have so often blushed to acknowledge him that now I am braced to it. Okay, now, put yourself in the setting. Kent, Gloucester are talking, and Gloucester's youngest son is nearby. Now, when we say his younger son, he's not 10 years old. Edmund is at least probably 20. Okay? And so, how does Gloucester speak about this son in his presence? Yeah, he's mine. You know, and I blush to admit it. So, what kind of family dynamic is this? Full of love and peace and wonderful joy? I cannot conceive you. Kent is saying, I don't understand. This young fellow's mother could, whereupon she grew round wound, and had indeed, sir, a son for her cradle, ere she had a husband for her bed. Okay? Did Gloucester ever marry Edmund's mother? No. Do you smell a fault? That is, do you smell a sin? I cannot wish the fault undone. Why? What a beautiful specimen of a man is what Kent is suggesting. Gloucester, yeah, but I do have another son. By order of law, that is, I have a legitimate one. You know, we did it properly. We got married. Then we had sex. Then she had this other son. Some year elder than this, who yet is no dearer in my account. that is, the legitimate one, isn't loved any more than the illegitimate one. Though this knave came something saucily to the world before he was sent for, yet was his mother fair. In other words, and I remember her. She was hot. There was good sport at his making. He remembers the very night when Edmund was conceived. And the whore's son must be acknowledged. And so finally he speaks to Edmund. I mean, if you were directing this, how would you have Edmund responding while he's standing on the stage next to his father and his father is saying all this? Does he just sit there looking at the clouds, smile on his face? Or does he kind of look down, maybe frown or grimace a little bit? So Edmund says, no, I don't know, Kent. So Gloucester introduces them and such. And Lear enters with his whole following. But before he does, Kent says, I must love you and sue to know you better. That is, I need to get to know you better. Edmund, sir, I shall study deserving. Look what your gloss says. I shall attempt to prove worthy of your kindness. Well, maybe. But it can also suggest I shall study deserving. I shall put on an act to be deserving. In other words, I will appear to be worthy or of merit. Okay? So Lear then comes in with all of his train. And look at Lear's, not quite his first words, but almost. Meantime, we shall express our darker purpose. Your gloss, hidden intention. The equivalent speech in the quarto version is substantially shorter, which we're not going to go into. So, our darker purpose, our hidden intention. Yeah. But is there another darker purpose? What else can that mean? Especially within the context of the entire play. How many of you have read this play before? Again, put your hands away so I can really see them. Okay, a few of you. What is one of the overall themes of Lear? I know you told me you liked it.
Deception.
Deception. Okay.
Betrayal.
Betrayal. How about this? Meaning of life. That is a dark purpose. That is a hidden purpose. Okay? That's why philosophers, asking for 5,000 years. What's it all about? Why are we here? I mean, it's what Oedipus wrestles with in Oedipus the King. It's what his daughter wrestles with in Antigone. Okay? It's what Shakespeare is frequently raising in his tragedies and even some of the comedies. All right? So he says, give me the map there. Know that we've divided in three our kingdom. 'Tis our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age. I'm an old man and I'm about to die and I don't want to have any more. That's what he means. Conferring them on younger strengths. Why? Because Albany and Cornwall's shoulders are big and strong and they can bear the burden. While we, it's one of Shakespeare's great half-lines, unburdened crawl toward death. Why crawl? Why not march? Why not face death, standing up, shoulders thrown back, head held high?
He's not a true king.
Okay. Why else?
It goes back to childhood.
Goes back to the childhood, the riddle of the Sphinx. Okay. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, 3 legs in the evening? A man. 4 legs is a baby, 2 legs is a man, 3 legs a man hobbling along with a cane. Could be. What else? He's talking a little bit, I think, again, about the darker purpose. What happens, especially, if you go back and remember what Hrothgar says in his homily. Okay? What happens if you live long enough in this world? You wither away. You experience your share or more of not only joy, but also pain and suffering. And what does that pain and suffering do? It beats you down. Okay? That's why Oedipus says, count no man happy until when? Until he dies. I mean, you talk about a darker purpose of life. Okay? You're going to see this kind of echo or ripple throughout the play. So he addresses Cornwall and Albany. He says, I'm going to tell you our daughters' dowries. They're already married. Okay? So he says, tell me, my daughters. Line 50. Since now we will divest us both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state. So he's divesting himself of 3 things. Rule, meaning power. Interest of territory, meaning ownership of property. And cares of state. I don't have to decide who lives and dies anymore. I don't have to decide peace treaties. I don't have to do any of that. Here's the basis upon which I'm going to do that. Tell us which of you loves us most. Okay? That's it. Just tell us. Who loves me the most? Whoever loves me the most, that person gets the greater portion of the kingdom. So what's it all fall down to? Lear's preference, flattery, narcissism. Okay. So, Goneril, you're eldest born. You get to speak first. I love you more than word can wield the matter. I love you more than words can say. Sounds like a rock song. Dearer than eyesight, space, and liberty. Beyond what can be valued, richer. I thought she said, I love you more than words can say. She's still talking. No less than life with grace, health, beauty, honor, as much as child ever loved or father found, love that makes breath poor and speech unable, beyond all manner of, beyond everything I've said, I love you. Cordelia. Then, what shall Cordelia speak? Love and be silent. Okay? This isn't Cordelia announcing aloud to her father after Goneril finishes. Well, what shall I say? No. This probably ought to be an aside. That's what I think. I think the text should say, even if it's an editorial emendation, aside, so that Cordelia addresses specifically the audience. So nobody else on the stage hears what she says. Notice Cordelia's thinking, I don't know how to answer this question. How is she going to? Love. And then silence. So Lear goes, all right, from here to here, you get this territory, Goneril. And you can look at it on your map. Okay? Regan. Because now she's second. Well, ditto what Goneril said. I am of that metal, self-metal as my sister. In other words, I repeat what she says. And prize me at her worth. In my true heart I find she names my very deed of love. But she comes too short. that I profess myself an enemy to all other joys. Any joy that doesn't flow from you, O great and wise and wonderful Father, is not a joy to me, is what she's saying. Cordelia. Then poor Cordelia. And yet not so, since I'm sure my love's more ponderous than my tongue. What does that mean, ponderous? Heavy, exactly. It's more weighty. It's more grave. It's more serious. What she means is what Goneril suggested. I can't put it into words. Okay. Lear to Regan. Okay, then you get this territory. Now our joy, although our last and least. Why does he call Cordelia his joy? She's the one he loves the most. To whose young love the vines of France and milk of Burgundy strive to be interest, what can you say? To draw a third more opulent than your sisters. Speak. Notice what it is. It's a contest. Who loves me the most? If you love me more than your sisters, you get the greater portion of land. Nothing, my lord. Nothing? Nothing. Nothing will come of nothing. Speak again. Unhappy that I am, I cannot heave my heart into my mouth. I love your majesty according to my bond, no more nor less. According to my bond. What bond? Exactly. Her filial bond, her daughterly bond to her father. How now, Cordelia? Mend your speech a little, lest you may mar your fortunes. And she goes, okay. Good, my lord. You have begot me, bred me, loved me. I return those duties back as are right fit. In other words, I repay you for those duties. I obey you, love you, and most honor you. Why have my sisters husbands if they say they love you all? Okay, what did they say? You are all the source of our love and joy. Sorry, Albany. Sorry, Cornwall. Happily, when I shall wed, that lord whose hand must take my plight shall carry half my love with him, half my care and duty. I shall never marry like my sisters. Okay? In other words, I don't love you more than I will love my future husband. Why? Because she says, part of me will then be bound to him. Yeah, I will still owe you what? Those duties that back are right fit. So Lear says, goes thy heart with this? In other words, you're not just kind of being a smarty pants, are you? I mean, is this what you really feel inside? Aye. So young and so untender. Untender. Hard-hearted. So young, my lord, and true. True meaning both honest and the description I used the other day. Upright, which is proper relationship. Let it be so. Thy truth then be thy dower. And what does he do? What comes right after that? He disowns her. How does he disown her? Does he just say, I disown you?
No.
So how does he do it? It's pretty important. He swears an oath by the sacred radiance of the sun, the mysteries of Hecate in the night, by all the operation of the orbs, from whom we do exist and cease to be. Here I disclaim all my paternal rule. So what's all those bye-bye-byes? by the gods in heaven, I disown you. Okay? He's swearing by everything he believes in. And notice that line, by the operation of the orbs. What's he talking about? Movement of the planets and stars. What we would call astrology. What in the Middle Ages they would call astronomy. Okay? Propinquity and property of blood, and as a stranger to my heart and me, hold thee from this forever. Blah, 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 blah. And Kent tries to stop him. Peace, Kent. Come not between the dragon and his wrath. And your gloss tells you the dragon, the heraldic emblem of Britain. Yeah, true. But there's more than that. When Lear calls himself a dragon, what else is he doing? Probably unintentionally. Remember the great chain of being? Where would the dragon be? In the human realm? In the angelic realm?
It's a beast.
A beast. So what is happening to Lear? He is devolving. He is descending. Okay? I loved her most, and thought to set my rest on her kind nursery. Oh, finally it comes out. Is this his darker purpose? What does he say, really, about what he thought about Cordelia?
That she was going to get everything.
And she would take care of him. So why didn't he just clearly, explicitly write that Dr. Sherman thesis that says, I want Cordelia to take care of me in my old age? Why did he have to make it a game? Because he's a foolish old man. Hence, avoid my sight. Okay? Kent, Royal Lear, whom I have ever honored as my king, loved as my father, as my master followed, as my great patron thought on in my prayers. What's Kent doing there? Okay, sucking up. What else possibly? Okay, he's setting up his appeal. But how is he setting up his appeal?
Obviously, you can see I'm on your side, and of course I love you.
Exactly. He is saying, I have lived for you. The bow's bent and drawn, make from the shaft. In other words, let loose. No, let it fall rather. Be Kent unmannerly when Lear is mad. Mad. Crazy, not angry. What wouldst thou do, old man? Ooh. Can you imagine somebody going up to Queen Elizabeth? What would you do, old lady? Okay, Lear has power. Elizabeth really doesn't. Thinkst thou that duty shall have dread to speak? What kind of courtier, or let's use a modern term, advisor, is Kent not? What kind of advisor is Kent not?
The one that's just going to tell him what he wants to hear.
Bingo. He's not a yes man. He's the kind of advisor every president needs. And unfortunately, he seems to be the kind of advisor no president has. Okay? When power to flattery bows, to plainness honors bound. When majesty falls to folly. To plainness. And in other words, he's saying, I have to speak clearly. When majesty falls to foolishness. Reserve thy state. In other words, hold on to your power, to your position. And in thy best consideration check, that is, and in your best thinking, stop this hideous, what's that next word? Rashness. Rashness. Kent is suggesting that Lear is doing this on a whim. It's an impulsive action. It hasn't been thought through. Okay? It has been argued that the cause of all of Oedipus's problems are one thing, that his, to use the Aristotelian term, his hamartia, okay, is not hubris, it's not pride. It's rashness. He acts out of impulse and doesn't think everything through. I mean, think about this for just a moment. If you're Oedipus and you've been told you are fated to kill your father and sleep with your mother, what two things do you never do?
Kill someone older than you.
Okay? Kill a man old enough to be your father. So, let's be real conservative here. Don't kill anybody 10 years older than you, even though 10 years wouldn't be old enough. But, like I said, be really conservative. And don't sleep with any woman old enough to be your mother. Just don't ever do those two things.
And especially not the one married to the guy 10
Yes.
years older than you.
They're really not smart there. Okay? Answer my life, my judgment. Goss tells you, what does that mean? I'll answer with my life if I'm wrong with this judgment. Thy youngest daughter does not love thee less. Okay? Notice, speaking clearly. Nor are those empty-hearted whose low sounds reverb no hollowness. What's he saying? Your two daughters, older two, they're hollow. Not Cordelia. I mean, look at her very name. Oh, what's the root? Cur, heart, cord, card, eac. Okay? She's the heart. Out of my sight. See better, Lear. And let me still remain the true blank of thine eye. That is the target. See better. There's another one of the major themes. Sight versus blindness. Shakespeare loves this theme. Or, another way of putting it, reality versus appearance. Okay? See truly. Let the scales fall from your eyes, as it were. Okay? We're also going to see this darker purpose idea. Darkness, light. Lear, now by Apollo. Kent, by Apollo. You swear to thy gods in vain. Vassal miscreant, get him out of here, blah, blah, blah. So, Lear says, you got to be gone. I'm exiling you. I'm banishing you. If you're still here in 10 days, pain of death. Kent, fare thee well. Why? Since thus thou wilt appear, freedom lives hence, and banishment is here. Why is freedom off there, and banishment is to be here, present with Lear? Because Lear isn't Lear. Lear is mad. Lear has taken leave of his senses. So, to be in the presence of this Lear is to be banished. And freedom is really to be somewhere else. But notice, Kent also might be telling us a little something here. I've been banished? Okay. Then I'll stay banished right here. Because what does he do throughout the play? He stays where Lear is. He keeps an eye, he disguises himself, and he keeps an eye on Lear. So, we're going to skip a bunch. Lear speaks to Burgundy in France. Burgundy doesn't want to have anything to do with Cordelia now. Why? She doesn't have any dowry. She doesn't have any territory. But what does France say? Line 229. Well, this is most strange. She whom even but now was your object, the argument of your praise, balm of your age, the best, the dearest, should in this thrice of time commit a thing so monstrous to dismantle so many folds of favor? In other words, France is saying, what did she do to lose all of your favor? And Cordelia's like, oh, please, I beseech your majesty, if for I want that glib and oily art to speak and purpose not. Notice it is a glib and oily art that her sisters are masters of. So what does he say? What does she say? Please tell France, I've not done anything. Better you should have not been born than not to have pleased me better. France, that's it? That's it? A tardiness in nature, which often leaves the historian spoke that intent. So he asks again, Burgundy, do you want her? Love's not love when it is mingled with regards that stands aloof from the entire point. Will you have her? Nope. So what does France say? 270. Fairest Cordelia, that art most rich being poor. Beautiful little paradox there. Most choice, forsaken. Meaning the best choice when no one wants you. And most loved, despised. Thee and thy virtues here I seize upon. Be it lawful I take up what's cast away. Gods. 'Tis strange that from their cold's neglect my love should kindle to inflamed respect. So he says, King, your daughter is now my queen. She is queen of us, of ours, and our fair France. Not all the dukes of watrish Burgundy can buy this unprized precious maid of me. Bid them farewell, Cordelia. Though unkind, thou losest here a better where to find. Okay? Unkind, unnatural. What's unnatural? Here, where they are right now. So that's why he says, you will find a better where, a better place. And I think Shakespeare might be punning there by using English words for that Latin word, utopia. Okay? A beautiful place or where. Lear, go ahead, take her. I don't want her. Okay? So, Cordelia speaks to her sisters. The jewels of our father with washed eyes, Cordelia leaves you. I know you what you are. And like a sister, I'm most loath to call your faults as they are named. Love well our father. To your professed bosoms I commit him. Notice, to your professed. They've spoken loudly and clearly about how much they love him. So why doesn't she just say, to your bosoms I commit him? Because she knows they're lying. Yet, alas, stood I within his grace, I would prefer him to a better place. I would recommend he go not to your bosoms, because she knows what is there. Snakes, adders, fanged. Prescribe not us our duty. Let your study be to content your Lord, that is, You should work on pleasing your husband. Cordelia, time shall unfold what plighted cunning hides. Who covers faults at last with shame derides. That is derided by shame. So, France and Cordelia leave, and Goneril and Regan speak. Okay? Lear and all the others have left. And they give us a little indication of what they're really thinking. Goneril, you see how full of changes his age is. The observation we have made of it hath been little. He always loved our sister most, and what? Now he kicks her out. 'Tis the infirmity of his age. He's an old man, he's losing his mind. Yet he hath ever but slenderly known himself. What does that mean? He hath slenderly but known himself. Does that mean he has seen himself as being slender? No. So what's it mean? What is Lear not given to? What does he not practice? Self-awareness. Self-examination. Okay? In other words, going to go back to the Greeks again. He doesn't follow what is written on the stone outside the cave for the Oracle of Delphi. Two-word phrase. Know thyself. Okay? Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, is it saying he's never had self-awareness?
Yeah, I mean, she seems to be suggesting he hath ever but slenderly known himself.
But this isn't a new quality.
No, she's saying he's always been this way. He's not given to deep thought, in other words. He kind of, something occurs and he responds. He doesn't sit and think through the ramifications. Okay. No, why does the Oracle of Delphi have this? Okay, if you remember the story of Socrates, Socrates goes to the Oracle of Delphi and he sees this out front, know thyself. And the Oracle of Delphi tells Socrates, you are the wisest man in the world. He's like, get out of here. Can't be. So what does he spend his life doing? Walking around asking troublesome questions. Because he's trying to find someone who is wiser than he is. It's what the dialogues of Plato are all about, supposedly. Okay? So why does he finally get put to death? Okay? It's because, according to the senators in Athens, it's because he's leading the people astray. He's leading students astray. Why? Because he wants them to think rather than just spit back what their elders are telling them. Okay? Socrates constantly asks people questions because he doesn't believe he's the wisest person there is. In other words, he follows what the Oracle at Delphi says. That is why he's the wisest. Because he knows he's not wise. In other words, because he's humble. He shows humility. Right? Lear is the exact opposite. He has no humility. He has no knowledge of himself. All right? So, Goneril. Well, after the comment about he hath but slenderly known himself, the best and soundest of his time hath been but rash. He's like a modern incarnation of Oedipus. Okay?
How old are the daughters in this play?
How old are they?
Yeah.
We're not told.
I'm not told.
Old enough to be married. I don't think that necessarily means, they're like 13 or 14. I think they're probably early 20s. So, therefore must we look from his age to receive not alone the imperfections of long engrafted condition, that is, more rashness, but therewithal the unruly waywardness that infirm and choleric years bring with them. He's going to be even worse now that he's old. Such unconstant starts are we like to have from him as kids' banishment. In other words, she's saying, this is very unlike Dad. We shall further think on it. In other words, we better plan out what's going to be happening. So we get Act 1, Scene 2. Edmund comes in. Okay. Edmund is the youngest son of Gloucester, the bastard, the illegitimate one. And notice what he gets at the beginning of this act. He gets the first soliloquy. Okay? That's a cue. First soliloquy. What does the soliloquy always do?
Addresses the audience.
Okay, it addresses the audience, and what does it tell us about the person delivering the soliloquy? Their motives. It tells us what they really think and believe. In other words, soliloquies never lie. In Shakespeare, at least. I don't know about modern. You can't trust any modern writer. Shakespeare's soliloquies always accurately reveal what the character really believes, really thinks. And what does he say? Thou nature art my goddess. To thy law my services are bound. And notice your gloss tells you, the material world as opposed to the spiritual realm and all that kind of stuff. Wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me? The plague of custom, the curiosity of nations, law is what he's talking about. Law, civilization. Because what do law and civilization have to do with nature, the natural world? Nothing. Nothing. Okay? For that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines, lag of a brother, that is, behind my brother. Why bastard? Well, the notion of bastard is what? It's a legal notion. Okay? Has nothing to do with nature. Wherefore base? That is, why am I base? Why am I low? Because my father wasn't married to my mother. When my dimensions are as well compact. My mind is generous, my shape is true, as honest madam's issue. In other words, I'm as well proportioned, as well built, my mind works just as well, I look just as good. So why am I considered bastard and base and he isn't? Why brand they us with baseness, bastardy? Base, who in the lusty stealth of nature take more composition and fierce quality than doth within a dull, stale, tired bed. Go to the creating a whole tribe of fops, got tween asleep and wake. In other words, Edmund is saying what was happening when he was being conceived. Passion. They were wide awake. Whereas this whole tribe of fops, they're conceived in the middle of the night when the man and woman roll into each other, have sex, and they don't even wake up or they're not even aware of it. Not much passion there. Not much intention there. Well, then, legitimate Edgar, his older brother, I must have your land. Our father's love is to the bastard Edmund as to the legitimate. Meaning, Dad doesn't really love either of us. Which we've already seen, right? Opening speech with he and Kent. Fine word, legitimate. Well, my legitimate, if this letter speed, that is, if it does what it's supposed to do, and my invention thrive, Edmund the base shall to the legitimate. I grow, I prosper. Now, gods, stand up for bastards. Now, who do you think that last line is meant for? What do you know about the Shakespearean stage? Or the Elizabethan theater? Here's the globe. It's actually not round. It's got like 28 sides. And you have the stage, and around here, you have galleries. Okay? So that if you were to take all this and create a cross section, it would look like this, and here's the stage, and then you have the tiring house back here and stuff. And you have 3 levels up here. Okay? Lower, middle, upper, and then this is what's called the yard. It cost a penny to get into the yard. The people who stood in the yard were the groundlings. Okay? The people who bought these had money. They could afford more. Queen Elizabeth, if I remember correctly, Queen Elizabeth had a box. It was somewhere right over in here. It was either the middle or the upper level. Okay? She was the only one who could go there. The individuals in the galleries were generally the middle to upper class. They were, for the most part, fairly well educated. Okay, they could read and write. Which, by the way, by Shakespeare's day, there was about 90% literacy in Elizabethan England. Literacy level in Elizabethan England was higher than it is in the United States. People could read better than they do today. All right? What about these people? Who were the groundlings? Peasants. Okay. Ditch diggers. People who didn't go to school. Think, if you're familiar with A Midsummer Night's Dream, think of the rude mechanicals, the rustics, Bottom, Peter Quince, Starveling, Nick Joyner, etc. Okay? So the groundlings would go, and the floor, the ground of this was not paved. It was just covered with dirt and straw, and oftentimes husks of nuts, like walnut shells and such. But these people would come and they'd bring their lunch, because a Shakespearean play would last 3 hours. Okay? They'd bring their lunch or something to eat, and they would often, we have this from anecdotal evidence, we have it in diaries and letters, they would often, while standing here, relieve themselves, because it's not like they could go out and use one of the restrooms like you can at the Globe today. So they'd stand there, drop their johns, relieve themselves, etc. And if they didn't like to play, they would literally scoop up what's on the ground and throw it. Okay? So, whoever is writing for the stage has got to do 2 things simultaneously. He's got to appeal to this group, and he's got to appeal to this group. So you have to have both high comedy and low comedy. All right? Stand up for bastards! What do you imagine the groundlings do? Because probably the majority of them are bastards. Okay? So Gloucester comes in. Kent banished. France parted in choler, that is in anger. The king gone tonight. He is prescribed, that is, he's limited his power. And all this done, what? Upon the gad, on the moment's notice. In other words, this hasn't even been planned through for a couple of days. Okay? So Edmund quickly puts away the letter. Whoa, stop. What is that? What do you... No, it's nothing. That's right. So he goes on and he implies that his brother is plotting against dear old dad. So, I want to skip a bunch. Pick up with line 105. So what have we seen thus far in the play? Let's talk about the Lear family. Dysfunctional, correct? Okay. How about The Gloucester family.
Also dysfunctional.
Thank you. This one's a little bit more dysfunctional than this one, because this one you have one actually plotting to kill, his father and brother. So, Gloucester, line 105. These late eclipses in the sun and moon portend no good to us. He's reading the signs in the skies. Though the wisdom of nature can reason it thus and thus, yet nature finds itself scourged by the sequent effects. What does that mean? It means love cools. Okay, love is warm. It's hot. Love cools. Friendship falls off. Brothers divide. What's that an example of? Dramatic irony. Gloucester doesn't know how true he has spoken. In cities, mutinies, in countries, discord, in palaces, treason, and the bond cracked twixt son and father. He doesn't know what he's saying. He is suggesting that the eclipses of the sun and moon show all these things are happening. Why? Because what happens when you have a solar eclipse? The moon is taking the position of the sun. It's blocking it out. That shouldn't happen. The moon should be where it belongs, away from the sun. Lunar eclipse, similar thing. Only there, it's the earth is blocking the sun's light on the moon. Shouldn't happen. It's taking the position or place of somebody else. That great chain of being, it's like, you go all the way down, it's like this link says, I'm tired of being at the bottom. I want to be at the top for once. Okay? This villain of mine comes under the prediction. What does he mean, this villain of mine? Edgar. The sun and moon. They portend what Edgar is planning. There's son against father. The king falls from bias of nature. There's father against child. We have seen the best of our time. In other words, today is going to be worse than yesterday. And tomorrow is going to be worse than today. And the day after tomorrow will be worse than tomorrow. What does that tell you about life? Talk about darker purpose? That means life really is bad. It's not, the bumper sticker, life's a beach. It's the bumper sticker, life's a bitch. And then you die. There is no pleasure, in other words. Machinations, hollowness, treachery, all ruinous disorders follow us disquietly to our grave. Machinations, plottings, conspiracies, hollowness. What's hollowness? Two-facedness, hypocrisy, treachery, ruinous disorders. How do they follow us to our grave? Disquietly. They don't sneak up behind. What do? They chase and harangue. So life is what? A fleeing from all this horrible stuff. Find out this villain, Edmund. It shall lose thee nothing. In other words, if you find out what Edgar is really plotting, you'll benefit from this. So he leaves. And notice, Edmund gets another soliloquy. This is the excellent foppery of the world. Foppery, foolishness. Okay? That when we are sick in fortune, often the surfeits of our own behavior, pause for just a moment. What does he mean, sick in fortune? He's probably talking about fortune's wheel, okay? A medieval construct for understanding why good and bad things happen to people. There is this goddess named Fortune, okay? This comes from Boethius, 6th century Roman writer, whom we've already talked about, the constellation of philosophy. And Fortune's wheel is constantly turning. Sometimes it turns fast, sometimes it turns slow. It usually turns slow when you're down here. And it turns fast when you're up here. Okay? So when he says that when we are sick in fortune, that is, when we have bad luck, which is often the surfeit of our own behavior. Edmund is not someone who would subscribe to the victimization mentality of 21st century America. That all the bad stuff that happens to me is somebody else's fault. It has nothing to do with my behavior. He would say, yeah, no, our sickness and fortune is the results of our own behavior. So what do? We make guilty of our disasters the sun, the moon, the stars, as if we were villains on necessity. As if I'm a dirty, rotten SOB because I was born under the astrological sign of dirty, rotten SOBs. Rather than, no, I just kind of happen to like being a dirty, rotten SOB. I just like murdering people or killing people or torturing people or whatever. Fools by heavenly compulsion. Knaves, thieves, and treacherous by spherical predominance. Drunkards, liars, and adulterers by an enforced obedience of planetary influence. You know, the whole thing about men are from Mars and women are from Venus. That very notion is what this is about. In all that we are evil in, by a divine thrusting on. Most of you aren't old enough to remember from the 1970s. Flip Wilson used to have a TV show, the Flip Wilson Comedy Hour. And every now and then he would come out dressed in drag as Geraldine. Starshield looks like she remembers it. And he would come out and he'd do all this stuff. And it would turn out Geraldine would get in trouble. And then she'd kind of look right at the camera and he'd say, "The devil made me do it, baby." Okay. What's he saying? The devil made me do it. It wasn't me. I wouldn't do that. Okay. So what does he describe all this as? An admirable evasion of whore master man. An admirable evasion. That is, an attempt to evade the truth. To lay his goatish disposition on the charge of a star. To lay his lecherous personality. His licentiousness. His desire to have sex with anything that moves on a star. It's the motion of the planets and the stars. My father compounded with my mother under the dragon's tail, and my nativity was under Ursa Major, so that it follows, I am rough and lecherous. I should have been that I am, had the maidenliest star in the firmament twinkled on my bastardizing. What does he mean? He wants to be what he is. And every now and then, Shakespeare includes in his tragedies a villain like Edmund, like Iago and Othello, like Richard III, okay, who just revel in their villainy. You can't help but like these guys because they're so rotten. That's how Edmund is. Edmund is not laying blame for any of his actions on anybody else. It's all what he wants. Okay? And so in comes Edgar. What does he do? Somebody's letting it known that your father's upset at you, etc. So we're going to skip that. Go to Act 1, Scene 4. I'm going to skip Act 1, Scene 3. Because we need to be a lot farther along, and we're not. And so Kent comes in, and what does he say? He gets a little soliloquy, and he says, I'm sticking around, disguised, because I'm going to keep an eye on Lear. And so he meets up with Lear, and they talk. Lear doesn't recognize him. All right? Lear asks Kent about line 11, what wouldst thou with us? In other words, what do you want with us? He uses that royal we throughout. Kent, I profess to be no less than I seem, to serve him truly that will put me in trust. In other words, I'm looking for a lord to serve. Well, what art thou? A very honest-hearted fellow, and as poor as the king. If thou beest as poor for a subject as he's for a king, thou art poor enough. Now, does Lear mean that he is a poor, meaning a bad king? No. It means he's poor. He doesn't have anything now. Well, why not? He gave it all away. What wouldst thou? Service. Who wouldst thou serve? You. Do you know me? No, sir, but you have that in your countenance which I would fain call master. And your gloss tells you something in your appearance that leads me to want to call you master. Yeah. But when he says you have that in your countenance, I think Shakespeare is playing on that medieval notion that you can recognize the king, whoever the king is, and however the king is attired. Well, what's that? What do I have in my countenance? Authority. Why? Because God chooses kings. And kings don't get to tell God, I'm done, let me punch my clock, because the punching of the clock is when you go and die. Okay, so he says, what can you do? I can keep honest counsel, I can ride, I can run, I can... Okay? So he says, okay, you can follow me. And we're going to skip a bunch again. Lear and Kent run into Oswald, Goneril's servant, and Kent beats him. And then they meet the fool. Line 95, let's say. Lear pays Kent for his service, that is because he beat Oswald. And the fool comes in and says, hey, let me hire him too. Here's my coxcomb. Takes off his fool's hat. Lear, how now, my pretty knave? How dost thou? Well, maybe you should take my coxcomb. What? Why? For taking one's parts that's out of favor. Okay. What does the fool know? That Kent is Kent. Okay, keep in mind, Lear doesn't realize that Kent is Kent. And then he speaks to Kent. Nay, thou canst not smile as the wind sits, thou canst cold thereby. Or shortly. Why does Kent smile at the fool? He's letting the fool know that he knows that the fool knows who he is. And he's probably going, don't let him know. Okay. There, take my coxcomb. Why, this fellow has banished 2 of his daughters. Did the third a blessing against... Wait, he didn't banish his 2 daughters. He banished Cordelia. So what does the fool mean how he banished his daughters? Say it again.
Making them stay.
Making them stay. What did Kent earlier say? That Lear, not being Lear, okay, has banished himself. And so to stay here, where Lear is not Lear, is to be banished. did the third a blessing against his will. If thou follow him, that is, if you can't follow Lear, here, where are my fools at? Because you're a fool. Would I had 2 coxcombs and 2 daughters. Why, my boy? Well, if I gave them all my living, I'd keep my coxcombs myself. Here's mine. Beg another of thy daughters. Okay. How foolish is the fool? He's not. There is a tradition in the Middle Ages, all the way up to today in some branches of the church, of what's called a holy fool. Okay? And in the Middle Ages, if someone was really a fool, which in our terminology, that would be someone who is mentally retarded, okay, Down syndrome child, those individuals were regarded as touched by God, as special, okay? Therefore, you didn't do anything harmful to them. They were respected. Doesn't mean they were treated well, put up in the Ritz-Carlton or anything like that, but you didn't harm them, okay? And you sometimes listened to what they had to say. Oftentimes, it was mere gibberish. But in literary conventions, the fool is often the person who speaks the truth, sometimes not very clearly. As you'll see with this fool, a lot of what he says, you're sitting there and you're going, I know there's something deep there, but I'm just not deep enough to understand it. Okay? So, Lear and the fool keep talking, and Lear threatens him, careful, the whip. Truth's a dog, must to kennel. That is, truth is a dog that must be, what? Contained. Because the truth is dangerous. He must be whipped out when the lady brought me stand by the fire, pestilent Gaul. And he says, sir, I'll teach thee speech. Lear says, okay. Have more than thou showest. Speak more than thou knowest. Lend less than thou owest. Ride more than thou goest. Learn more than thou trowest, that is, than you believe. And set less than thou throwest. Now, take each of those for a moment. This is almost like Polonius' advice to his son Laertes distilled. Have more than thou showest. Own more than what people see. Okay? Speak less than thou knowest. Don't give voice to everything you believe. Lend less than thou owest. Because what happens if you lend more than what the owest there can be either what you owe to others, and it can also be what you own. Ride more than thou goest, which means practice riding. Learn more than what you merely believe. And set less than thou throwest. That is, bet less than you throw, than you gamble. Leave thy drink and thy whore, and keep in a door. Leave off your drunkenness. Leave off your wenching. Stay inside sometimes. And thou shalt have more than 2 cents to a score. Quit your drinking, quit your whoring, and what's going to happen? You're going to have a little bit more to keep. Okay? Kemp, well, this is nothing. Then 'tis like the breath of an unfeed lawyer. Unfeed means unpaid lawyer. You gave me nothing for it. Lear, well, nothing can be made out of nothing. He already said that once to Cordelia. Fool. Now to Kent. Tell him what the rent of his land comes to. Nothing can be made out of nothing. How much land does Lear own? Nothing. So what's his rent going to be? Nothing. What would his rent go to? The maintenance and upkeep of his large train of followers. This is what causes problems with his two daughters. He wants to go spend time, spend 1 month at one house, spend another month at another house. And how many followers, how many nights does he want to have with them? 100. What does that mean? Feeding, caring for 100 grown men. That's a lot of upkeep. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of rent. And Lear doesn't have anything to pay for it. So is it any wonder that his daughters go, no. No, we're going to whittle that 100 down. 50, 25, 10. You know, why do we really even need more than one? Okay? So they keep going back and forth and go to line 220. Goneril has entered, and Lear's now talking with her. And Goneril, you know, she's a little bit amazed at what Lear's been saying. And she says, line 220, as you are old and reverend, should be wise. Why? Do you necessarily expect a 20-year-old to be wise? Do you expect a 70-year-old to be wise? Yes. Why? They've lived. They've experienced much more of the world than a 20-year-old has. And so what does wisdom come from? Suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, Hamlet says. Okay? Banging your head against the wall before you finally realize, damn, that wall is hard. That hurts. Maybe I should try another route. That is wisdom. Putting knowledge into application. As you are old and reverend, should be wise. The only problem is, Lear isn't. She says, and here, what do? You keep 100 knights and squires, men disordered, debauched, bold, that our court is infected with their manners. Lear, that's it, I'm out of here. Saddle the horses. And she's like, that's exactly what she wanted. Send them off to her sisters. Okay? And as he's getting ready to leave, he speaks to her and says, my men aren't that way. My men, line 246, are men of choice and rarest parts, all particulars of duty know. And in the most exact regard, support the worships of their name. Oh, most small fault! How ugly didst thou in Cordelia show? What small fault? Lack of love, which like an engine wrenched my frame of nature from the fixed place, drew from my heart all love, and added to the gall. Okay, when he talks about his nature being wrenched from its place, what he means is the ground is shifting under his feet. If you've ever been in an earthquake, you know what I'm talking about. I'm from California. I love earthquakes. It's the big ones that you don't really want to be around. It's like I used to say, I love tornadoes. Until the Good Friday tornado of 2010 came about 200 yards away from me, and I saw it up close and personal. Okay, what's he mean here? Her actions are making him more unstable. He's like he's lost his balance. Why? Because the madness is rising. Okay? All right, we'll stop there.